Hello and welcome to Koodcast, the podcast that aims to give you a glimpse into the world of Kood coding schools. Join us for interviews with school alumni, current students, industry visionaries and other fascinating guests. I'm your host, Preet Goff. Enjoy! It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio this morning Lauri Haav, the CEO of Koodtech. Good morning, Lauri. How are you?
Good morning. I'm really well. Thank you.
Excellent. Can we please start by you introducing yourself by a few words?
Sure. So, as you already spelled out, my name is Lauri. So very nice to be here. I'm the CEO of Kood, and I've been involved in IT business for more than, I think, quarter of a century. So something like 26, 27 years. And the reason I'm now the CEO of Kood Schools is that I'm uniquely qualified to lead educational institutions, because I've been expelled or exmatriculated of about 4 of them in Estonia during my various attempts at obtaining higher education. So I think I'm uniquely qualified, yes.
That would qualify me as well. I think I stand at 6 now.
Oh, right. Okay, so you have 2 ahead of me. But to my defense, one of them went bankrupt from under me, so that wasn't technically my fault.
Okay, but anything else that you've done work-wise?
Yes, so I'm a co-founder of an e-commerce company. I've been managing director of Estonia's e-residency program, introducing the digital state of Estonia to other countries. Also worked in a couple of startups in fintech, but also AML and anti-fraud fields, and also actually a couple of software companies as well. So quite a nice rounded experience regarding IT, maybe not so much in education.
Okay, but how did you end up with education in the first place? I mean, it's quite a story that you just told, but landing up in charge of an educational institution is not something that probably you yourself would not have expected a few years ago.
Well, as these things usually start with a phone call. So somebody called me up and asked me if I would want to consider being a candidate for this role. And at first I thought like, okay, me, and then a school, and then it sounded all like a headmaster's job almost. I was like, no. But then we started talking with the founders and realized that actually there is a pretty interesting business opportunity also behind the school, expanding the model to other countries and to other institutions. So that's what caught my interest, like let's say intersection between IT and business. So now adding education to it.
So I can only assume that you know the founders. Who are the founders of Kood and how did this get started?
We have quite a few, actually. So there's 8 founders. Some are people who have also founded some pretty well-known household startup companies like Bolt and Wise, but also people from other walks of life. So we have people from legal backgrounds, from PR backgrounds, public administration, but let's say 50-50 with IT and the startup backgrounds.
And how did they come around to establishing this?
Well, as it usually happens with a startup.
With a phone call?
Yeah, probably there was a few phone calls, but this was more about the classical story of trying to solve your own problem. Because back in the day, I mean, all the startups who had become scale-ups in Estonia were really struggling finding the right talent to fill the software development roles. So many ended up also creating development centers in other countries, etc. Because I suppose the total output of software development engineers internally wasn't high enough. So there was a need to speed up this, let's say, bridging this skills gap. And then, as it sort of usually happens with startup people, that if they see a problem, they start solving it and do not necessarily expect someone else to solve it for them. And the end result, I could say, is a pretty unique type of a school and unique type of education. I think probably you and the listeners would agree that most of the times when you're looking at disruptive innovation, then it usually comes from outside the system. So in a way, might be even a good thing that nobody from the founders team was actually too deeply involved in the education system, so they could start with a clean slate, with an empty paper and saying, if we would want to build a school that would offer sort of rapid skills development, do it faster, and do it also more economically, I suppose, than the existing solutions, and what would it look like? So that's what started it.
So 3 years ago, you arrived on the Estonian educational scene with a bang and disrupted the entire ecosystem. But how have your competitors taken to this? I mean, how do you get along with other establishments who offer similar kind of educational support, or are there any similar other institutions like this?
I wouldn't say that they are similar, so that's why also I suppose there is not like a big feeling of competition. And also, if you look at the numbers, then this 2024, so we are recording at the end of 2024. So this year we had about 178 people graduating from kood Jõhvi. And so if you look at the total output of software engineering graduates in Estonia, so between the universities and the vocational schools, there are about 800 plus our about 180. So let's say roughly about 1,000 people are graduating into this role in a year. So in 3 years, we have captured something like 17% of market share. But what I think maybe what's more important in this is that we haven't gained this market share at the expense of others. Because when I'm looking at vocational schools, there's 12 of them who are offering software development as a curriculum. And universities, then their output numbers are actually same as they were 3 years ago. So they haven't really lost any ground. It more looks like we have created some new market.
And where does this new market come from?
I think it comes from the fact that we don't have too many prerequisites to actually come and study at kood Jõhvi. So you can be anyone from anywhere, as long as you are an adult and you have at least, let's say, B2 level of English comprehension and functional reading skills, because the language of software tends to be English, right? So we have very few requirements. We don't ask for any grade averages, or we don't even actually ask for a high school diploma. So it's really very liberal in terms of anybody can try. But at the same time, it's also maybe one of the hardest schools to get into, because yes, you can try, but when you show up, we put you through a 3-week coding camp to actually test your speed of learning, and also for you to understand if you actually fancy that profession. Because it's maybe the saddest story is if you've learned something for 3, 4, 5 years and then realize that actually don't like the profession, right? So that's the biggest waste. So I think we are able to have this kind of positive churn, if I may call it like that people who come and try this bootcamp for 3 weeks, so they will first of all understand if this type of learning is for them, because it's super rapid, but it also means that it's rather uncomfortable, because your brain is constantly outside of your comfort zone, right? So you're developing, it's like your muscle. I don't know, do you work out a lot? Do you go to the gym?
I walk.
You walk to the gym. Okay, yeah. Great. But let's say if you think how your muscles develop, then they develop by breaking up and regenerating. Mm-hmm. It's uncomfortable. And the same thing happens with your brain. So if you're out of your comfort zone, if you're learning really hard and really fast, it feels uncomfortable. It's not an easy thing. So in that sense, people get to experience this kind of learning. It's very active, problem solving. Nobody's telling you exactly what to do. You have to figure out your own way. But also people realize if they like this profession, because they have an understanding, sometimes people have an understanding that software developer's job, maybe from a little bit too romantic viewpoint, that, these people are working in a big bank or building some fancy government systems, or
earning lots of money.
Earning lots of money, of course, which is also true, but it's also very hard work. So, and oftentimes people maybe don't realize that. So this 3 weeks gives them, the potential students, then understanding about the job, about their own sort of learning style, and do they actually does it actually fit for them?
You talked about the 3-week sprint, but I understand the process is a bit longer than that. I mean, can you walk me or the listeners through the rest of the journey? I mean, once you get started, once you apply, and then you go through the sprint, and then how long does actually the learning process last for?
The very beginning is actually a bit of a computer game, like an online computer game. Long time ago, there was a movie called Matrix, if you remember. There was a character called Neo, right? So how did Morpheus recruit Neo? It was also through a game. So if you got through the challenge, then a magic portal opens, and in our case, the magic portal opens to Jõhvi. So basically, then you're welcome to participate in the 3-week selection sprint, which is a kind of a boot camp, as we spoke earlier. And we do those 4 times a year. So almost always there's one around the corner, maybe next month, maybe a couple of months ahead, but there's always next one coming. So you can always look in our website and check for the calendar. And if you get through the bootcamp, and are alive and well and kicking and want to continue, and we have also seen that your skill level has developed enough in those 3 weeks, then you're welcome to join the study program. We actually also don't follow the academic calendar too much. So we start 2 cohorts or 2 batches per year, one in the early spring and one in September. So twice a year you could actually start the study process. And that lasts for about, well, let's say minimum 12 months, with some extensions up to 18 months. And you can do that either on-site in Jõhvi or in our other campuses, which are opening soon in a town near you. Or you can do it online as well. And roughly, I think 60-70% of people opt for the online version and work from home or from their office or wherever they can. And then the rest tends to either live permanently or partially at our Jõhvi campus, where we also have a dormitory for the students. So let's say a hybrid mix.
Okay. But what about the skills? What kind of actual skills do you give to the people who graduate from your school? So is it just that they learn to code in a particular language, or is it something else that they get as well in addition to that?
I think the most important things is that you learn to learn, and you learn to learn really fast. And the second important skill, which will probably last you a lifetime, is learning to solve problems with technology. What particular language, what particular framework or technology use, these will change, right? So, okay, today our main curriculum is in Java. It has also been in Go. So these, let's say, implementation languages can vary and they can change also in the future. But the main important thing is that you learn to solve problems with technology.
Okay. And what about the people who have so far graduated from your school? How would you describe them? Is there a universal profile that you can describe, or is it people from all walks of life, different age groups? How would you describe that?
It is super diverse, actually. So just thinking about last graduation party, I think the youngest person was 19 and the oldest was 66. So it's quite a span of different age groups. Also, we've had about 33 nationalities. About 40% of people who come to Jõhvi have already higher education before they join, but 6 to 7% don't even have a high school diploma, right? So it's super varied group of people, actually. It's really hard to put this kind of one profile. Perhaps I would say that they're curious people and they're also rather brave, in a sense that, like, learning a new skill and pushing yourself to learn a new skill is not an easy task, and that in the beginning you will probably feel a little bit stupid or, like overwhelmed. So I think that is maybe a characteristic, that they are brave and they're not afraid to go out of their comfort zone. But as to demographics, all that, it's super varied.
And what about success? How do you measure the success of your operations?
Yes, so our main goal is that people either get a job or start a business, or in other ways are able to utilize what they learned. So that's our main goal. Of course, we also look at how many people graduate, just to understand what's the learning curve, what's the dropout rate, etc. But the main goal is that people are able to advance their career, that either they get a new job or they get a promotion because of this study, or they are just much better at what they did before. So in a way, like one of our founders usually says, it's like it's one thing to be a good journalist, but it's another thing to be a good journalist who can also code, because that opens new possibilities. So maybe you don't want to become a programmer like full-time, but even in another profession, knowing how to code and knowing how to solve problems with technology is a very useful skill going into the future.
Okay. And then finally, what's your call to action?
Well, come and test this out yourself. So as I said, we are running 4 selection sprints per year. So probably there's one around the corner. In this particular case, because we're recording in December, there's one in January. And also the next batch of students starts in March, and the next one after that in September. So do check this out. There's definitely an option or an opening just around the corner.
Thank you very much for sharing this, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
Hello and welcome to Dav Hojt, joining us all the way from Liverpool. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm really good. I think it's a little colder where you are, but otherwise, pretty good here in Liverpool.
Excellent. Glad to have you on board. And if you could just explain in a few words your background and your connection to Cord.
Okay, so uh, uh, there was a moment in my life where I was working as a product manager, and I interacted, of course, as you would expect, with software professionals kind of on a daily basis. And I I had a moment where I decided to kind of increase my technical awareness, right? So I wanted to better understand the kind of software development life cycle, if you like. And I enrolled at a similar peer learning school. It's called 42. And my intention was to kind of spend a small amount of time there to do this selection event, just to learn a little bit about technology. And I discovered it was a little bit addictive, let's say. This coding thing is quite a rewarding sensation each time you kind of solve a problem. And so I kind of became a software engineer by accident, for want of better words. So yeah, I have an experience of learning to code in this environment without teachers. It was kind of it was life changing, let's say like that. The opportunities that were available to me were kind of um, fixed, let's say, and learning to code and learning to solve problems with code opened a lot of doors for me.
And now you've been through different coding schools before, and now you're actually part of Chords and you're looking after the curriculum here. How did you land that position?
Yeah, so I was living in Estonia. I lived in Tartu for 5 years, actually. So Estonia has a really big place in my heart. And I had this wonderful opportunity to learn to code and change my life. And I, I was kind of a little, let's say, annoyed that the places that I cared about didn't have um, the same opportunities for people to learn to code without teachers. So I learned to code at 42, and there wasn't a 42 school in Estonia at that time in England either. So where all the people were that I cared about, there wasn't an opportunity for people to learn to code without teachers. And I I discovered at some point that Code was opening, and at that time it was powered by a different education supplier called Zero One. And in the beginning, I it's a strange thing to learn to code without teachers, right? And if you were to explain to somebody that you can go to a school that doesn't have teachers and you can learn to code, some people might have some trouble to believe that it's possible. And so I took part in some testimonial activity, and I wanted to be kind of closer and enable it to work. And rather accidentally, I found myself as the head of the curriculum at Zero One. And there was a moment where Code decided to go its own way and make its own curriculum that was more relevant to the market in Estonia. And I was able to join Code and help form the curriculum here.
Fascinating stuff. And now that you have this experience and that allows you to compare Chord to these other coding schools as well, then how would you identify the differences that Chord has in relation to these other schools, for example?
So the number one thing about Code is that we don't guess, right? So the curriculum is uh, led by industry, right? So we've gone to industry to understand what is it that the ideal graduate profile should be. So when employers are looking for new tech talent, what is it that they're looking for? What is that profile that can not only get their first job pretty early on, but also grow in their career once they reach the workplace? And so our curriculum is a response to what industry needs. And so our graduates are a compelling response to that kind of skill shortage that we see in Estonia and more globally.
And when we talk about skills, then we have to be conscious of the fact that skills are relevant at this particular moment in time. But what happens to skills over time? Do they become obsolete? Do they have an expiration date? If the skills that you're teaching to your students today, will these still be relevant in 2 years' time as well? How do you safeguard yourself against that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you think about a skill, it depends if you are thinking about a specific named technology or if you're talking about competence in a technical area, right? So, of course, there's many different front-end frameworks, um, to name a few, like React or Angular, right, or Vue or whatever that might be. And the important thing is that our students are able to adapt to any scenario. So, it might be that today one particular framework is the most popular, and tomorrow another framework might be the most popular. But the important thing is to have competency to understand that technical area well. That could be thinking about security or state management. So the important thing is to have competence in a general area, and that's something that we deliver through the curriculum today. So it might be that the curriculum has a particular technology that is used, a particular named technology, but that's more just a kind of implementation framework at the moment that they solve the problem. But we make sure that the technical area is understood instead of just a specific named technology. So the skills that are earned by our students will be relevant for a long time, for sure. But we do make sure that we update our curriculum over time so that as graduates leave the curriculum, they have skills that are relevant and marketable to employers. When people land in the workplace as well, we don't teach our students anything, actually. And if I use the term teach, I use it kind of erroneously. So we give students problems to solve, and students go off, find the skills on their own, research different types of technologies, write code, trial and error, collaboration, and they solve problems much in the same way that they would in the workplace. So when our students kind of learn, we rather teach people to learn. So when our students come to code, they learn to learn. So even if the things that they learn in the curriculum that are skill specific, even if those things are not relevant in 2 years, they have the skills to learn new skills on demand. So if there was a shift and there was a new kind of technology area, or if there was new kind of very specific technologies in a technological area, then our students or graduates have the ability to learn those on demand and deliver value in the workplace.
Okay, and when we talk about the future, then you're probably keeping an eye on everything that's happening in this world because of your role as head of curriculum, anyways. But are there any identifiable future trends that you could outline already today? That there are certain segments that are becoming more relevant in the coming years?
Yeah, of course, there's those two letters, right?
Yes.
AI. So artificial intelligence is shaking up a little how the world works, let's say, and that also has an impact on the skills that we teach students, right? And AI covers a lot of different aspects of the development life cycle. So one thing is using it to be more productive, but you can also use AI in the way that we solve problems today. So if you were to take something like syntax highlighting or code completion, over time there's been many things that would give developers a boost in their productivity. And AI is kind of like this, right? I can more quickly produce code. Now, of course, there's a risk because uh, these AI models today have a degree of hallucination. So it's quite possible that you would ask an AI to produce you some code that does something, but that code might in fact do something else. So it's important to be able to read that code and see that it does what you expect. So it's still really important and a very relevant skill to know how to code, even if you use artificial intelligence to arrive at that final piece. So the curriculum over time will likely adapt so that the people who graduate have the ability to be very productive. But it's about getting it right. We can't use AI too much in the beginning. We need people to learn and understand the skills. But towards the end of the curriculum, we see like an opportunity to adapt this part so that students can use AI and therefore be very productive once they reach the workplace. Then there's using AI in the actual final solution, right? So we see a lot of these generative AI models today, mostly in the sphere of natural language processing with these large language models. So we're able to do things that we couldn't do before, right? Now, we have, for example, a response to this. So we have a generative AI module that we're developing right now in the curriculum. And I can talk about some specific projects that are in this area. So we have a healthcare app that can take data about you, ask you questions, create you healthcare plans, create you dietary plans, and give you like an ability to create a custom healthcare like roadmap for yourself and for you to be able to track where you're up to in that, and to also ask for advice, kind of like that kind of normal chatbot experience where I can say that I have this problem today, or I'm feeling really good. What should I do more of? What should I do less of? So like a healthcare companion. So that's like a really interesting project that we have in the works right now as part of the Gen AI model. So like I said, we're industry led. We take a look at what's happening and we make sure that our curriculum is a response to that.
So while peer-to-peer learning is the cornerstone of the learning process at Kood, then perhaps, as I understand, the students still have to go through a 3-week sprint of sorts before they can actually enroll. And you've been putting together some of the tasks for them as well that they have to complete whilst they're doing the sprint session. And could you give a very concrete, specific example of the type of tasks that they have to do there?
Yeah, so the sprint is cool, and that's normally the moment in the learning journey that has the steepest learning curve. But I say steepest learning curve in terms of the amount of knowledge that one will acquire during that 3-week time. Not that it's a super difficult mountain to climb. I'm not saying it's easy. It's challenging, of course, but the amount of knowledge that one will gain in that time is quite a lot. So people come to us with a different range of experiences. Some might have a small amount of technical experience before, but plenty of people come to us with no experience in software engineering at all. Some people have even never used a computer before, right? And so the first thing that we do is we enable people to navigate on a computer, so they can create files and like use the file system on a computer. And then we give really simple challenges to solve. And that might be to make the letter A appear, then the letter Z, and then print an alphabet. So we teach concepts like loops and if this, then that, else this, then that. So we teach the kind of very simple building blocks of software. And in the end, all software is kind of a collection of these loops and if-else conditionals and functions and variables over time. So we introduce these concepts. We don't teach, though. We just ask people to solve a problem, and we put some small restrictions on how they solve that problem so that they have to understand these different paradigms, let's say. So when it comes to printing the alphabet, for example, we might only let them use one print statement. And that means that they need to use a loop. So they can have A, and then they'll change the value of A to B, and then print this. So we put those restrictions there so that students are forced to learn those different concepts. So they spend 2 weeks kind of doing those really short technical exercises to understand those different paradigms. In the last week, the third week of the sprint, we give some slightly bigger problems to solve. And the reason we do that is so that students can kind of understand why they've been learning these small building blocks of technology. So we ask students to build a data ingestion tool for weather station data. So they can make something that can take data from different weather stations around the world, and then over time you can see a history of a particular weather station's data. So it was raining on this day and it was sunny on some other day. We also asked them to build I think the closest thing would be a clone of the Wordle game, so that they can like do something fun and they can see it working. And we also asked them to make a really small and basic banking application. So there is a bank account with some different people, and I can say I'm this person and I'm adding money or I'm withdrawing money, and I can see how much money do I have, or move money between accounts. So students can already do this after 3 weeks, right? So imagine what our students can do after 1 year.
And what can they do after 1 year?
Well, the curriculum develops the skill building in the direction of full stack. So a full stack developer is somebody who can contribute to a full software project. So when you use an application today, for example, we're using some video conferencing today. I have an application that's running in my web browser, and there's also some program that's running somewhere on some server in what we call a backend. So we have front end and back end, and our students are able to develop applications in both of those spheres and to be able to connect those two so that we have like a full working project. So the curriculum itself after the 3-week selection sprint is 12 months long. So we have 3 module areas. We have coding fundamentals, where students will learn to build basic software. So they take the knowledge from the selection sprint, but they start to build slightly bigger technologies, slightly bigger projects using a bigger range of technologies. So here they'll learn about very basic command line applications. This is kind of software that will run just on one computer. They'll also learn about basic data persistence. So they'll learn a little bit about storing and retrieving data from databases, and also different kind of data, formats, right? So, for example, to take a CSV, like a spreadsheet, do some kind of analysis to it and transform that data in some way. So they get some like real usable skills right at the very beginning. So if somebody, for example, was moving through the curriculum and maybe they had a job on the side, then they would even be more productive like before they even get to the end of the curriculum. So that's the first module, that's coding fundamentals. The next module is applications development. And this is where the students learn to build more real applications that you could imagine to use on a daily basis. So we have some really interesting projects. We have one where the students will control the operations of a racetrack, right? So they'll register new drivers, start races, end races. You can see a leaderboard of who is the fastest, who had the fastest lap, who did the most laps. So the spectators have something to enjoy. And we actually provide those projects much in the same way that you would receive a problem to solve in the workplace. So this means that we give a list of problems to solve for users. And our students then need to understand how to make those problems go away for users. And each time they solve a problem, the product takes more shape until it's ready to be shipped. So we kind of emulate the workplace in that way. And then we have one project that is kind of a dating application. We're not strict on what the matching algorithm is. So somebody might choose to solve the romance problem, or maybe match people on music grounds. Maybe you're looking for somebody to go to live concerts with, or find someone to walk your dog together with. So we have like a matching algorithm that's kind of like a Tinder, but not necessarily for romance. And then students finish off with a specialization. So they'll spend 3 to 6 months learning in a particular subject matter area. So we have several areas today. One I mentioned before is generative AI. We have mobile development, embedded systems. We have more advanced full stack project offering to cybersecurity, DevOps and cloud. So we have like a number of interesting areas that allow students to specialize. If a graduate chooses to, then they'll have skills to find work in that specialist area. They may not, and that's okay. They'll have more feathers in their cap. So yeah, we have a curriculum that lasts for 12 months, and the idea is that someone can migrate into the workplace once they graduate.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing all that information with us today. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now, but I do look forward to having another conversation with you sometime again soon. So thank you very much for joining us from Liverpool. This was Dav Hojt, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to the studio to two very special people. We have joining us today Siimon and Mihkel, who are graduates from the very first batch of Jõhvi. Welcome to the studio, boys.
Hello.
Hi, thank you.
So just a brief storytelling time about how you got started with Jõhvi. What do you remember from the first batch, and what are you up to today? So, Siimon, if you could go first.
Yeah. Oh, damn! It's been some time. But what I do remember is the first sprint. Obviously, the first sprint. It's I think it's something that a lot of people from Jõhvi hold really dear to them. Like these 3 weeks of Lang. I think I was crazy. But that wasn't like the best part of it. The best part, of course, was the people. So the amount of people we met and talked to and actually like worked with already in these 3 weeks before actually starting the code Jõhvi, that was already very cool. So I think that was the best part of it. It's been some time since it, so a bit hard to remember some details, but I think the second or the third week when we had all these activities, I think that was also very fun. Like and of course the third week, this Roro, of course, for our batch. I think we just gathered like 10, 15 people and went to Narva to Roro, which is a legendary place as well.
Yeah, I'm originally from Narva, so during the selection sprint, and Siimon also lived in Narva for quite a while. And
I just moved like 2 years before to Narva, to Tartu University, Narva College, to study for IT.
Yeah, and then we gathered like 10 or 15 people and went to the Narva's riverside and get some drinks.
2 days before the last exam.
Yes. But I remember when I first heard about the code Jõhvi, it was somewhere in the news, and I was in the military at that time. And when application period applications were opened, then we had to go to the forest with our military group. So I had to make some agreements with my commanders to bring my laptop with me. And then I got in, and then we met in selection sprint. It was very tough, very quick, like 8 hours workday basically. Sometimes some day was like 10 hours long, but in the last week we had more activities, and we had even like small football tournament there, and also me and Siimon met there in finale against each other playing, and your team I think won.
Yeah, we won. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fun memories.
Yeah, even more actually to that, to bring back to this 3 weeks, is that we helped each other out quite a lot. I think we moved out of the class like on the second or third day because we were assigned classes at first, and everyone was in their class like a group. But I think in that class we kind of understood that we don't really get any help or can't really help others that much, and we moved to the like this hall area.
Atrium. It
Yeah,
was called.
yeah, atrium. Yeah. So and then there was like 4 or 5 people, and we all like helped each other. I think we also like knew quite a lot about programming already, or had like some basic knowledge. So it was really good to help each other like on stuff. Some tasks were like super easy, but they made no sense as a solution. So they was like, have you thought this angle? So that was like really cool as well.
And also I remember that we were pretty active people in the sprint. So at some points people were coming to us asking for help. And I remember it was like Tuesday of the second week when we had like 20 or 30 tasks. It was very rough day, and I was helping someone. And then I realized that I have a line of people who are like waiting for me to get help. And then I was thinking like, okay, I cannot help everyone because I have to get my stuff done as well. But fun memories.
So you have fun memories and you remember the great challenges, but where has it brought you today? Where are you today? Are you employed in the world of IT, and what are you up to?
Yes. Actually, it's a bit funny story, as in the way I actually applied for Jõhvi is almost the same way that I applied to the company that I work right now in Pipedrive. It was accidental, almost like, oh, I'm just gonna give it in. Like maybe I'll get in, maybe don't. It's fine. And for Jõhvi, I just did the test. I felt really bad. I think I did the worst from the batch, and I still got in. I was like, okay, yes, that's good. And for Pipedrive, I was already in Jõhvi from September to April, and I decided to go to Pipedrive because I had some financial problems already. I had my own business, I had some stuff, and I was like in debt, so I needed some financial status. And I went to apply to Pipedrive because my friend was working there, and was like, man, that sounds like a very good place to work at, and it is. And I just got in, and I've been working there since. Started as a junior, and now I'm an engineering manager of a team there, data platform team. Yeah, thank you. So it's been a good journey for me.
Excellent. And what about you, Mihkel?
Well, I started. My first step in IT field was in one gambling company. I was doing testing there, but at the same time, I was still studying in Jõhvi. But I wanted to get here in Tallinn, and at some point I just got here in Jõhvi back. So like currently I'm working in Kood as a full stack developer, and it's been like in May it's gonna be like in total in May it will make 2 years for now.
Okay. Excellent. But prior to joining Jõhvi, did you actually have any programming experience, or did you have any aspirations to find employment in this field, or was it just a complete gamble?
Well, before Jõhvi, I had some experience with University of Tartu.
Mm-hmm.
I was learning there informatics, but I quit or didn't succeed, however you want to call it. So like and I even like thought that maybe IT is not something for me, so I was thinking about other university opportunities. So when I was actually applying to the Jõhvi, I also tried to get into other universities, so do some advertisement or whatever other areas. But at that time Jõhvi was so fresh, something unknown, like a deep ocean, and I felt that I want to dive in there. And I think it was the best option, best decision.
What's the most useful piece of advice that you've taken with you from your days in Jõhvi? And what is the most applicable that you actually utilize in your day-to-day work today?
Wow.
Moment of silence.
That's a hard question. Like, oh wow.
Well, I will maybe start from that point. I will maybe just pick some my main skills what I brought from the Jõhvi. So one is like the communication, especially within your team. So when we were studying, I saw a lot that if I saw in my team, we were communicating like daily. We were even telling each other when we are not working or when we are working, because like in my team we were separated, so we lived in different cities in Estonia, so we haven't like got that on-spot learning, so we did everything online, and we had to keep somehow sync up. And yeah, we had some meetings and stuff, plannings, and we were always like telling to each other when someone is absent or no. But from another hand, I saw like other teams who were not communicating that well. When someone is missing, this already affects the whole team, and so communication is very important. And the second thing, which is important, is time management. So like I'm a true believer that you have to get a well sleep, because if you're not sleeping, then probably you won't be effective. And social skills is also important.
And what about you, Siimon?
I think from skills perspective or like some advice perspective, I feel like I was mostly giving advice to others rather than vice versa. Because I did have some experience already when I came in. I had some experience with coding. I was studying in university already before that. And I also had some experience with actually entrepreneurship by that time already. I had my own business. So a lot of things I brought to Jõhvi. But one thing I learned is still that basically your team is as strong as your weakest team member. And also, of course, time management and all other stuff that comes into play but also one thing I can agree on with is rest. So for me, Jõhvi kind of landed on that time when I already had 3 or 4 years since military, where I was working hard. It was COVID times as well. So it also like gave it so much, it made everything so much harder. So there was like 5 hackathons. I was taking part in different things at the same time. So I think I burned out pretty fast. Like burnout was coming. And by the time I started Jõhvi in September, I was so burned out, I had 0 energy to work on it. So until January, until I actually went on a first vacation, like a 2-week vacation to mountains where I had no connections to work or whatsoever, and I actually got some rest, I didn't even start Jõhvi. So, and then I had a vacation, I came back, I was so refreshed. I think I did the first part of it in like 2-3 months, basically. Everyone was like, oh, okay, Siimon is doing nothing, and then boom, boom, audit, like in weeks. It was crazy. But that rest part, I learned it in Jõhvi, and I've been doing it, like taking it with me since. At work, at Pipedrive, I'm taking like all the vacations I can. It's just, I have to get that rest in to be as effective as I can be. And I totally agree with the sleep part as well and all these things. It's, in order to be a juicy lemon or like give your best, you have to be rested or give away something that burns you out. That's a truly good lesson.
You both mentioned social skills as being very important parts of your stay at Jõhvi. Do you still maintain social contacts with your other peers from your first batch, or have you all gone your separate ways?
For me, I guess I was so individual in all of this, so I didn't have that much social connections. I did help a lot, and some people that I helped, I still connect with, because some of them actually even worked in my company at some point, and just like some other connections as well. But whenever I see Mihkel anywhere, like I went to see football and Mihkel was there, and I was like, it's always a warm feeling to see Mihkel once in a while again. But I think it's hard to connect, as I'm in such a I'm giving my most in everything I do. So, and I'm also giving my most in PyDrive, and that means also connecting mostly with PyDrive people and like people of partners of PyDrive. And now that we are trying to do more partnership with Jõhvi, that means also more connections with, again, code people. But whilst I wasn't doing that, I was trying to be the strongest individual contribution I could be, I didn't have that much time to communicate outwards that much. So for me, maybe not that much, but I'm still like doing a lot of networking and partnering outside of PyDrive and stuff like that. But not with code people that much. So it's different for me, probably, rather than you.
Well, I'm working with some people from my batch already, and but in overall, while I was studying, and the amount of people I was connected to was way much higher than now. But Codif is still like they are organizing a lot of events inside the building for the students. But for example, last Friday we had our first ever alumni event, so that was very fun. And when I went there, I thought that, okay, we will listen some speeches and maybe and then go home. But actually, most of the people, they were socializing and talking to each other until 10 p.m. And then we gathered with a big group and went into the city to the bars. So like, I'd like to say that our community, they're pretty active. They really like to talk to each other, and I was also very happy to see my old peers and to get know what's happening with them now.
Mm-hmm. It's the stereotypes. They have changed. It's the alert for you guys. If you're in IT, you have to have soft skills and be a social person, because it has changed. It used to be that when you look at the IT guys or like IT crowd, they're serious. You see like two IT guys which are like super secluded. They're isolated or everything. They want to talk. If the phone is starting to call, it's gonna burn up. It's not that anymore. It's all about connections. It's all about socializing. It's all about getting that foot into the door. If you want to get that position, it's very hard to be an IT person nowadays, and you have to be social. So kind of makes sense.
Yep.
Would you describe yourselves as social people before you joined Jõhvi, or is it something that the school actually changed about you?
Yeah, I think I've been always that person.
I think I've changed a bit. I think I'm more active in socializing now. Also, when I was joining Jõhvi, I was not maybe very sure in my English skills and stuff, and this was something for me to push forward, to try to keep up, to not being afraid of making mistakes. This one was one of the reasons, for example, why we started even the podcasts.
That's what I was actually trying to get to. This is a very symbolic moment for us here today, because you are the original founding fathers of the Codecast podcast.
So basically,
how did this start?
I don't know. I think
let's make it clear. Currently, we are the host, and you are our guests.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Actually,
I remember very well that moment.
The moment,
yeah.
You can start. I'll see if I can fix it.
It was the launch event of Jõhvi of the first batch in Sillamäe. At that time, Jõhvi's building was not ready yet, so we were. Our studies were happening in Sillamäe's vocationing school, and it was opening event. A lot of people were there, a lot of guests, some funders were also there, and I remember that we were standing in a circle, me, Siimon, and Dav Hojt was there, and we were talking about something, and suddenly we made some jokes, or like we tried to remember what we have done in schools, that some school newspapers or radios and stuff, and then I think it was me or Siimon. It doesn't make sense anymore, but someone of us like made a joke that, oh, but we can do the same here, like for example podcast. And then I remember that time that at the same moment we just looked into each other's eyes. And then was the moment that, okay, let's do it. And after that, we went to Codify team, brought up the idea to them, so we want to do it. So we might need some assistance, or like, are we even allowed to do it? And they were, you go for it, and they supported us. So we bought some microphones. We bought only 2 microphones, and then we tried to gather some technical stuff, and somehow that started.
Yeah, everything was basically our own stuff. A lot of it was our own stuff. So we had a couple of our own microphones, couple that we bought with Codify. The table was just a stack of monitors or stuff like that. So, but when the first idea came, I think it was the opening event, and we were just like watching each other. Okay, we could try, and we left it to think, and then after the event, we went out to parking lot. And we were like talking about this idea for multiple minutes. I think 10-15 minutes, cars started already ready to go, and we still couldn't, because we were quite excited. I was very excited. I think you were also very excited about this idea. And then we just gathered and started doing it, and some ideas, some designs, some stuff. Like I animated the podcast, this design.
So we've come full circle on this one, and this is exactly what we are aiming to continue here as well. To carry on with your legacy. So thank you very much for starting the podcast, and thank you very much for coming here today and sharing your experiences with the rest of us, and thank you for the fantastic energy you have brought to the discussion as well. So thank you very much for coming, and wish you nothing but the very best.
Yeah, thank you for inviting.
Thanks. We are joined now by Natalia Jürves from Swedbank. Your job title is quite peculiar and somewhat interesting, but I'm afraid it's too difficult for me to explain it personally. Can I ask you to please explain a bit about what you do at Swedbank and how you got started in IT?
Good morning, and happy to join you here, Britt. Of course, I can give it a try, although I would say the area I'm responsible for is quite mysterious, and it's always challenging to introduce it to people outside of a context. So today, the position that I'm holding at Swedbank Group is called Head of Customer Master Data Management. And to put it a little bit into context for our listeners, that means that my IT teams are responsible for securing consistent, accurate, and timely customer data availability across our systems landscape in Swedbank. Basically, that means that the services that are run and developed by my teams 24/7, run 24/7, not developed 24/7, are there on the background in every customer interaction that customer has, no matter which channel he or she uses. And that's on a Swedbank Group level.
Excellent. So you're in a very good position to then understand what are the needs of the employers at the moment when it comes to recruiting and hiring junior software engineers and people like that.
Yes, in general, of course, I do have a very good impression because my team managers are out there in the world looking for the best talents we can attract to actually run and develop our services for Swedbank. But then, of course, in my current position, I do not recruit the software engineers myself. I'm rather focused on the leadership positions, but I'm very familiar with the challenges we have, yes.
Could you describe the process a little bit? You did mention that you do not do the actual recruiting yourself at the moment, but you're probably familiar with how the process works at Swedbank. I'm sure this is something that our students and listeners would be very interested in to understand how the recruitment process actually works in detail.
Of course, we need to put into context a little bit. Swedbank's IT is a very large organization, starting from the mobile bank, internet bank, lending, data analytics organization, etc., etc. So every team manager's and organization approach to the recruitment process might be somewhat different. But overall, of course, usually we start with a preliminary interview where a future team manager meets the candidates after the preliminary scanning of the CVs. And this is where we mainly focus on evaluating the tech stack and the experience match on a very high level. But there is a very big focus on the soft skills of the candidate. And I would say from the technical roles, we would first of all expect, of course, the motivation and ability to learn continuously, because that's what you do in the IT field. Then, of course, we look for team players, which is a very essential part of how we deliver things at Swedbank. And then finally, of course, the overall self-leadership is extremely important. So ability for a person to understand what are the strong and weak sides of his or her personality, and what are the ways to continuously improve.
Thanks for that. And in addition to being an excellent role model when it comes to women in technology, one of the reasons why we've asked you here today is because you already have some existing form of partnership together with kood as well. Could you elaborate a little bit and describe that to us, please?
Absolutely. It has been quite a pleasure the last, I think, 1.5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking at Mari-Liis here, to collaborate with kood Jõhvi. And our partnership started from basic exploration of how can we benefit on both sides from this great project. I'm personally very much inspired by what kood Jõhvi does and the innovative approach they have to IT education. So therefore, for me, it was a great opportunity to contribute. What we have been focusing so far is mainly on the collaboration on what's the tech stack expectations. We have been also participating in job fairs, running some mock interviews, making sure that we support the students via the job shadowing. Also have done some attempts for code review, although the tech stack quite differs with those sprints. So in this sense, this is the good start, and looking forward to set the plans for 2025 and more engagement from both sides.
And as I understand, you have a personal connection with kood Jõhvi now as well.
Yes, I have to agree to that statement because September this year, my son has actually joined kood Jõhvi and is currently progressing there with finding his way in the IT field.
Any feedback you have received so far?
He's very excited, and he actually very much likes the approach of self-study and the teamwork that kood Jõhvi learning environment is supporting.
That's great to hear. And when we talk about role models, then clearly you are a role model for all women in technology, but the key question is, how can we attract more women to get engaged in the IT sector?
Well, and here I would like to first of all reach out to all of the females that are working in this field in different positions and different companies. Be a role model. That's the first thing to do. Nobody else will do that for us. You have to be visible. You have to talk your story. You have to encourage. IT is not more complex than any other area in the world. So in a sense, just talking about that and actually admitting the challenges that we face on the way and how we overcome this definitely is encouraging for the many. Additionally, in the organizations, we have to initiate different initiatives to, of course, continue to support and encourage women to join technology. At Swedbank, we actually have our own movement, Women in Tech, where we contribute a lot with role models, of course, different information sharing, upskilling activities, etc., to bring our own talents to join the IT field.
Thank you for listening to Koodcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and please make sure to visit kood's website for further reading and other episodes. Remember, it's kood.tech. Once again, kood.tech. Be seeing you.